Before you decide whether this video is worth your time, let me say something that might challenge you. If you watch this until the end, something in you will shift. Not because I am going to motivate you with noise. Not because I am going to repeat cliches you have already heard 100 times. But because you are about to confront a truth most people spend their entire lives avoiding. You have been taught the wrong definition of success. And if you do not question it now, you might spend the next 10 years climbing a ladder that is leaning against the wrong wall. This is not entertainment. This is calibration. Somewhere deep down, you already know you are capable of more. You feel it when you are alone. You feel it when you see someone building something extraordinary. There is a quiet voice that says, I am not here to live average. But then reality interrupts. Doubt. Expectations. And slowly that voice becomes quieter. Today we turn the volume back up. I am going to challenge how you think about love, success, effort, money, and meaning. I am going to connect psychology with ambition, philosophy with execution, identity with achievement. And if you stay with me, you will not just feel inspired. You will feel exposed in the best possible way. Because the real reason most people fail is not lack of talent. It is lack of alignment, lack of obsession, lack of courage to commit fully. So do not watch this casually. Lean in. Because by the end of this video, you will have a choice to make. Continue drifting, or start building something that actually matters. Let's go deeper into the first idea, because this is where everything begins. When I say love makes you unstoppable, I am not talking about emotion. I am talking about orientation. I am talking about the direction of your mind. Most people wake up and negotiate with their day. They ask, how much effort is required? How uncomfortable will this be? Is it worth it? And based on those calculations, they decide how much of themselves to give. That is not love. That is transaction. Love removes negotiation. When you truly love what you are building, effort stops feeling like sacrifice. It becomes expression. Think about that carefully. When effort is expression, you do not count the hours. You do not measure the pain. You measure the progress. That psychological shift changes everything. People assume success belongs to the most talented. It does not. It belongs to the most persistent. And persistence is not powered by discipline alone. Discipline is limited. It runs on willpower, and willpower fades. Love does not fade the same way. Love regenerates itself because it is tied to meaning. If you love solving a problem, you are not discouraged by how complex it is. Complexity becomes attractive. It becomes a puzzle. And when something becomes a puzzle instead of a threat, your brain moves from fear to curiosity. That single shift from fear to curiosity is the difference between quitting and innovating. Most people stop when they feel resistance. They interpret resistance as a signal to retreat. But if you love the mission, resistance becomes confirmation that you are doing something significant. Nothing meaningful is easy. If it were easy, everyone would do it. And if everyone did it, it would not matter. Love changes your relationship with difficulty. Difficulty stops being an obstacle. It becomes part of the experience. You stop asking, why is this hard? And start asking, what is this teaching me? That is the mindset of someone who cannot be stopped. Let's be intellectually honest for a moment. There will be days when motivation disappears. There will be days when progress is invisible. There will be moments when people doubt you, criticize you. If your fuel is approval, you will collapse. If your fuel is money, you will compromise. But if your fuel is love for the mission, you endure. Endurance is underrated. We glorify speed, but endurance builds civilizations. The ability to stay focused on one meaningful objective for years, even decades, is rare. And that rarity is not about intelligence. It is about emotional commitment. Love is emotional commitment at the highest level. When you love something deeply, quitting feels like betrayal. Not betrayal of others, but betrayal of yourself. And that internal standard is powerful. External rewards fluctuate, markets change, trends fade, public opinion shifts. But if your internal standard is rooted in love for the mission, you remain stable while the world moves around you. Psychologically, love creates identity. You do not say, I am trying this. You say, this is who I am. That difference is massive. When something becomes part of your identity, you protect it. You invest in it. You refine it. You do not casually abandon it. This is why some people outlast everyone else. They are not necessarily smarter. They are not necessarily better funded. They are simply aligned. Their work is not separate from their identity. It is integrated into it. And when identity and work merge, effort becomes natural. Imagine two people starting the same project. One is doing it for validation. The other is doing it because they are fascinated by the problem. The first person will be crushed by criticism. The second will analyze it. The first will feel attacked. The second will feel informed. That is the power of love. It transforms feedback from emotional threat into intellectual data. Love also eliminates boredom. Boredom is a sign of disconnection. When you love the craft, repetition does not exhaust you. It refines you. You understand that mastery requires iteration. You become comfortable doing the same thing again and again, but better each time. That is how excellence is built. There is also a philosophical dimension here. Human beings need meaning. Without meaning, effort feels empty. Without meaning, achievement feels hollow. You can reach a goal and still feel dissatisfied if the process was disconnected from who you are. But when you love the mission, the process itself becomes meaningful. Even small progress feels significant. And here is something most people ignore: love increases resilience because it shifts your time horizon. When you love what you are building, you think long-term. You stop obsessing over immediate results. You begin asking, where will this be in 5 years, 10 years? Long-term thinking reduces emotional volatility. Short-term setbacks lose their power. That is why love makes you unstoppable. It stretches your perspective. If your perspective is 1 week, you will quit quickly. If your perspective is 1 decade, you become patient. Patience combined with action is unstoppable. It is not loud. It is not dramatic. It is consistent. And consistency beats intensity every time. Let's address fear. Fear is natural. Anyone attempting something meaningful will feel it. But love reframes fear. Instead of asking, what if I fail? You begin asking, what if I never try? That question is heavier. That question creates productive discomfort. It pushes you forward instead of pulling you back. When love drives you, regret becomes more painful than failure. That is powerful because failure is temporary. Regret can last a lifetime. If you truly love your vision, you would rather fail pursuing it than succeed doing something that does not matter to you. That level of clarity simplifies decisions. It cuts through distraction. It removes half-hearted commitments. Unstoppable does not mean invincible. It means resilient. It means adaptive. It means you adjust without abandoning the mission. You pivot strategies, not purpose. And this is critical. Love is not blind attachment. It is deep commitment to a problem worth solving. If one method fails, you try another. If one path closes, you create a new one. Because the mission matters more than your ego. That is not emotional chaos. It is focused intensity. When people see someone who cannot be discouraged, they call it confidence. But often it is not confidence. It is devotion. Devotion to an idea. Devotion to a future that does not yet exist. Devotion to building something that feels necessary. If you want to know whether you truly love what you are doing, ask yourself one question. Would you still pursue it if no one applauded you? If the answer is yes, you are dangerous in the best possible way. Because now your drive is internal. An internal drive is sustainable. External motivation is borrowed energy. Internal love is generated energy. Borrowed energy runs out. Generated energy compounds. And when energy compounds over years, not days, the outcome becomes inevitable. So when I say love makes you unstoppable, I am not making a poetic statement. I am describing a psychological engine. Love creates identity. Identity creates commitment. Commitment creates consistency. And mastery creates impact. That is the chain. Break any part of it, and you slow down. Strengthen the first link, love, and the rest follows naturally. You do not need to chase motivation every morning. You need to build something you care about deeply enough that walking away feels impossible. If you find that, protect it. Invest in it. Study it. Improve it. Obsess over it in a healthy, disciplined way. Because the world does not change because of casual interest. It changes because of committed love. And here is the truth I want you to reflect on. If you are not unstoppable, it is not because you lack ability. It is because you have not yet found something you love enough to endure for. Find that, and once you do, do not let go. Because when love becomes your fuel, quitting is no longer an option. Now let's move into something even more uncomfortable, because this is where most people get it wrong. We have been trained to measure success in numbers. Revenue, followers, titles, awards, net worth, visibility. The world has created a scoreboard, and from a young age we are told to climb it. The higher the number, the more successful you are supposed to feel. But let's question that assumption with intellectual honesty. If success were purely numerical, why do so many people reach the top and still feel empty? Why do individuals with money, recognition, and influence still struggle with dissatisfaction? The answer is simple, but it is not easy to accept. Success is not accumulation. Success is alignment. Alignment means your external actions match your internal values. It means what you build in the world reflects who you actually are. When those two dimensions disconnect, you experience friction, and friction over time becomes burnout. Psychologically, humans need coherence. Your brain is constantly trying to reduce internal conflict. If you spend years pursuing something that does not resonate with your deeper beliefs, you create cognitive dissonance. You might silence it with distractions, but it does not disappear. It manifests as stress, anxiety, or a quiet sense that something is off. Money can amplify comfort, but it cannot resolve misalignment. You can be financially successful and existentially lost at the same time. That is why I say success is alignment, not money. Money is a tool, it is a resource, it is a multiplier. But it is not a compass. If you use money as your compass, you will constantly change direction based on opportunity instead of purpose. And when opportunity drives you more than meaning, you become reactive instead of intentional. Alignment requires self-awareness. You must ask questions most people avoid. What do I actually value? What kind of problems do I care about solving? What impact feels meaningful to me, not impressive to others? These questions are uncomfortable because they force you to think independently. The world rewards conformity. Alignment demands individuality. When what you love and what you build become the same thing, motivation changes form. You stop needing constant external validation. You do not wake up asking whether this is trending. You wake up asking whether this is true to your mission. That shift creates stability. Let's analyze this structurally. Imagine two systems. In the first system, your identity is separate from your work. You say, "This is just my job." In the second system, your work expresses your curiosity, your values, your long-term vision. In which system will you invest more energy? In which system will you persist when the environment becomes hostile? Alignment reduces internal resistance. When you are aligned, when you are misaligned, even small tasks feel heavy. That heaviness is not laziness, it is psychological misfit. Most people interpret exhaustion as a need for rest. Sometimes it is, but often it is a need for alignment. You can work 12 hours on something you love and feel energized. You can work 4 hours on something you resent and feel drained. Energy is not only about time, it is about congruence. Philosophically, alignment answers a deeper question: why does this matter? Without a clear answer, success feels arbitrary. You achieve one goal, then immediately chase another, hoping the next milestone will finally create fulfillment. But fulfillment is not found in the next milestone. It is found in coherence between your internal world and your external actions. There is also a strategic advantage to alignment. When you are aligned with your mission, decision-making becomes simpler. You filter opportunities through purpose. If something does not move the mission forward, you decline it. That clarity saves time and protects focus. Focus is a scarce resource. In a world of constant distraction, alignment acts as a filter. It prevents you from scattering your energy across unrelated pursuits. Let's address the fear behind misalignment. Many people know they are not aligned, but they stay where they are because it feels safe. Titles provide status. Walking away feels risky. But there is another risk people ignore. The risk of spending years building something that does not represent you. That cost is invisible at first. It accumulates quietly. 1 year becomes 5, 5 becomes 10. Eventually you look at your life and realize you built a structure that looks impressive from the outside, but feels foreign on the inside. That is not success. That is construction without intention. Alignment does not mean immediate perfection. It does not mean every day is exciting. It means the direction is correct. Even when progress is slow, you feel anchored. You know why you are moving. You know what the larger picture is. And when direction is clear, temporary discomfort becomes tolerable. Another critical dimension is integrity. When you are aligned, you do not need to perform a different personality to succeed. You do not need to fragment yourself. Fragmentation is exhausting. Acting one way in public and thinking another way in private creates internal tension. Alignment integrates you. Integration increases confidence, not arrogance, not ego, confidence. Because you are no longer trying to impress, you are trying to execute. Execution is powerful when it is backed by belief, and belief is strongest when it comes from personal conviction, not social pressure. Consider long-term impact. The most transformative work in any field is rarely driven by quick profit. It is driven by conviction that something should exist. That conviction sustains effort through uncertainty. Financial rewards often follow, but they are consequences, not causes. When you reverse that order and chase the consequence first, you weaken the foundation. Success that is built on alignment compounds differently. It is not fragile, it is not dependent on trends. It evolves with you because it is rooted in values, not circumstances. This does not mean money is irrelevant. It means money must serve the mission, not define it. When money becomes the goal, compromise becomes easier. You adjust your standards to maintain income. But when alignment is the goal, you protect standards even when it costs you in the short term. That protection builds reputation. Reputation builds trust. Trust builds long-term success. Now let's make this practical. If you want alignment, you must design your life intentionally. That requires reflection. It requires removing noise. It requires being honest about what excites you intellectually, not just socially. Ask yourself what kind of problems you would willingly struggle with for years. Not what sounds impressive. What feels necessary to you? When your daily actions reflect that answer, you experience a different type of momentum. You stop feeling like you are chasing success. You start feeling like you are building something coherent, and coherence creates peace. Peace is underrated in discussions about success. We talk about ambition, dominance, growth. We rarely talk about internal stability. But internal stability allows you to take bigger risks. When you are aligned, you are less afraid of temporary loss because your identity is not tied to a single outcome. That psychological freedom is powerful. You become harder to manipulate, harder to distract, harder to discourage, because your direction is chosen, not imposed. So when I say success is alignment, I am redefining the metric. Instead of asking, how much have you accumulated, ask, how integrated are you? Instead of asking, how high have you climbed, ask, does this mountain belong to you? If you build someone else's dream perfectly, you may earn applause, but you will not earn fulfillment. True success is when your values, your effort, and your results exist in the same system. When they reinforce each other instead of contradicting each other. That is sustainable. And here is the reflection I want to leave you with. If everything you have disappeared tomorrow except your skills and your beliefs, would you rebuild the same path? If the answer is no, you are chasing numbers. If the answer is yes, you are aligned. And alignment is the only form of success that does not collapse under pressure. So do not ask how to make more. Ask how to align more. Because when your inner world and outer work become one system, success stops being a destination and becomes your natural state of being. Now let's confront the final layer, because this is where separation happens. This is where amateurs and builders divide. It is easy to say you love something. It is easy to say you are aligned with a mission. But the real question is this: do you love the process, or are you addicted to the outcome? Most people are in love with the outcome. They love the applause. They love the launch. They love the title. They love the moment of victory. But they tolerate the process, and tolerance is not enough. If you only love the result, your motivation will always be fragile. Because results are delayed. Results are uncertain. Results are influenced by variables you cannot control. When you attach your emotional stability to outcomes, you place your peace in the hands of chance. That is a dangerous strategy. Loving the process is different. It means you find meaning in the act of building itself. You derive satisfaction from improvement, not just recognition. You measure progress by refinement, not applause. Psychologically, this changes your entire relationship with time. When you are obsessed with outcomes, time feels slow. You are constantly waiting, waiting for validation, waiting for results, waiting for proof that your effort matters. And waiting creates anxiety. But when you love the process, time feels productive. Every day is an opportunity to iterate. Every mistake is data. Every setback is feedback. You are no longer waiting for success. You are practicing it daily. There is something deeply philosophical here. Human beings do not control outcomes completely. We control inputs. We control effort, learning, adaptation. When you love the process, you focus on what you can influence. That focus increases your sense of agency. Agency builds confidence. Confidence builds resilience. And longevity wins. If you analyze mastery in any domain, you will see repetition at its core. Repetition is not glamorous. It is not exciting. It is often invisible. But repetition is where skill compounds. The person who loves repetition becomes dangerous, because they do not get bored doing what others abandon. Boredom is a signal. It reveals misalignment with the process. If you constantly need new excitement to stay engaged, you are chasing stimulation, not mastery. Mastery requires depth. Depth requires patience. Patience requires love for the process. Let's make this concrete. Imagine building something complex. There will be prototypes that fail. There will be versions that collapse. There will be ideas that seem brilliant at first and flawed later. If you are emotionally attached only to the final victory, each failure feels like a personal attack. But if you are committed to learning, failure becomes iteration. Iteration is progress disguised as imperfection. The process teaches you humility. It teaches you to separate ego from execution. When you love the process, you are less defensive. You are willing to admit flaws because improvement matters more than pride. That intellectual honesty accelerates growth. There is also a neurological dimension. Your brain adapts to what it repeatedly does. If you repeatedly chase quick wins, you train yourself to need constant reward. If you repeatedly commit to disciplined practice, you train yourself to tolerate discomfort. Discomfort tolerance is a competitive advantage. The world is increasingly optimized for convenience. Everything is faster, easier, automated. But meaningful work still requires sustained effort. The ability to stay engaged in a complex process for years is rare, and rarity creates value. When you love the process, you detach from comparison. You stop measuring your chapter 3 against someone else's chapter 20, because your satisfaction comes from internal growth, not external ranking. Comparison thrives on outcomes. Process thinking neutralizes it. You are not asking, am I ahead? You are asking, am I better than yesterday? That question keeps you grounded. It keeps you progressing without unnecessary psychological noise. There is another advantage. Loving the process protects you from burnout. Burnout often comes from emotional overinvestment in results. When results fluctuate, your emotional state fluctuates with them. High highs, low lows. That volatility drains energy. Process-oriented thinking stabilizes emotion. You celebrate effort. You analyze results without being defined by them. That balance allows sustained performance. Let's address ambition directly. Some people fear that loving the process will reduce ambition. They think focusing on the journey makes you less competitive. The opposite is true. When you love the process, you become more ambitious because you are not afraid of the work required. You are not intimidated by the scale of the goal. You understand that big outcomes are the accumulation of small, repeated actions. Ambition without process love is fantasy. Ambition with process love is execution, is what turns vision into reality. There is also an existential truth here. Life itself is a process. There is no final scoreboard at the end that captures the depth of your growth. If you live only for milestones, you will miss the majority of your existence. Most of your life is spent in between achievements. So the quality of your life depends on how you experience the process. If the process feels like suffering, your life feels like suffering interrupted by brief moments of pleasure. But if the process feels meaningful, your life feels consistently engaged. That is a powerful reframe. Loving the process means respecting incremental progress. It means understanding that transformation is gradual. It means recognizing that discipline is not punishment but structure. Structure creates freedom. When you build disciplined routines around something you care about, you reduce decision fatigue. You automate progress. You create an environment where improvement is inevitable. And inevitability is powerful. You do not rely on mood, you rely on system. Systems are built through repetition. Repetition becomes enjoyable when connected to purpose. That connection is love. Let's be honest. There will be days when the process feels heavy. Loving the process does not mean constant excitement. It means commitment even when excitement fades. It means trusting that consistency will compound. Compounding is a quiet force. You do not see dramatic change immediately. But over time, small improvements create exponential difference. If you quit too early, you never reach the compounding phase. Loving the process keeps you long enough to benefit from compounding. That applies to skill. It applies to relationships. It applies to health. It applies to innovation. The principle is universal. Now connect this back to alignment and love as fuel. When you love the mission, you endure. When you are aligned, you move with clarity. When you love the process, you sustain momentum. All three work together. Remove process, love, and alignment feels heavy. Remove alignment and process feels empty. Remove love for the mission and everything collapses. This is why loving the process is not optional. It is foundational. Ask yourself honestly, do you enjoy the daily practice of your craft? Do you respect the repetition required? Do you see value in incremental improvement? Or are you simply tolerating the work in exchange for a future reward? If it is the second, your motivation will always be unstable. But if it is the first, you are building something durable. Durability matters more than intensity. Anyone can sprint for a month, few can build for a decade. The decade builders change industries. They do not burn out because they are not chasing applause. They are refining systems, they are deepening understanding, they are engaged in an ongoing experiment. Treat your work like an experiment. Each day is data. Each outcome informs the next iteration. Curiosity replaces emotion. That mindset turns struggle into strategy, and strategy scales. So here is the final thought I want you to carry with you. If the reward disappeared, would you still show up tomorrow? If the answer is yes, you have found the process worth mastering. If the answer is no, you are attached to the applause, not the craft. And applause fades, but mastery compounds. So fall in love with the repetition. Fall in love with the refinement. Fall in love with becoming better in ways no one sees. Because when you love the process, success is no longer a moment. It becomes your daily habit.